There are no secrets to processing your wildlife images. Either you know how to or you still have to learn. It's as simple as that. So now, in today's video, I'm going to have a look at the special adjustment brush in Lightroom and a lot of the sliders that sometimes was a bit of a mystery to people. Let's check it out. So, the special adjustment brush is one of the tools in Lightroom which you can use to affect selected areas of an image. Now, if you look at my Lightroom over here, the panels on the right hand side, basic, HSL, split toning and so on and so forth, all affect your image, the frame, globally. Any adjustments there will be applied to the entire frame. What you have then at the top, next to the crop, these are all your special adjustment tools: crop, clone removal, red eye removal, gradient, radial, and here's our special adjustment brush. Any of these, and we're going to specifically look at the special adjustment brush today. Once I open this and the menu drops down, any area that I paint with the brush will be affected, and only that area will be affected. So anything here is called selected or selective adjustments, right? This is for example, Morkel did a post yesterday where he painted in the lions and adjusted the clarity on them. That's what this brush is used for. If you have, for example, an area that you want to make slightly darker or slightly lighter, for example, selective dodging and burning, yes? Or you want to punch the saturation of the sky just a little bit because it's not quite like you remember it. Before we get going, you have to be aware that any of the special adjustments can sometimes be frowned upon because people take it too far. It becomes obvious, and that's a problem, that's wrong. The idea behind this is when you do a special adjustment, your viewer, the reader of your image, should still not be able to say, that's where you painted, that's where you painted. I can see on this edge that there's a very stark drop of, that's where you did it. It needs to be subtle yet effective. And there's a couple of sliders in the brush that makes this possible for us. The feather, flow, and density sliders. Now, a lot of you have been asking about this for the last while. I did a video on the special adjustment brush a while ago. You can click up here and go and check that out. This is 2.0. This is the special adjustment brush reloaded. Right. I've created a gray image here, just a gray frame, which will show us how and what these sliders do. We're going to start off with the density slider. So, density slider sits at the very bottom of my special adjustment brush, and it's underneath the flow and feather, which we're also going to look at. They work together, but let's break them apart for now. I've got my feather on 0. Once I take my brush onto my image, yes, any area I paint will then be adjusted. So, for example, to make this work, I'm going to drop my exposure on the bar to -4, which means any area I paint drops the exposure. Remember, I'm not painting this color, I'm just dropping the gray so it becomes a darker gray. So, with density at 100, I'm going to draw a straight line down here. Done. Right? To draw a straight line, you hold shift and then brush, and it locks in an orientation for you. Little tip on the side. So, density, literally what it does is it says how much of my adjustment at the top will be applied. Think of it as a percentage. 100%. So I've capped my density at 100, which means whatever adjustments I dial in at the top here, they will be applied 100% to where I brush. Let's drop this down now to 75. So I'm taking my density down to, I'm going to type it in here, to 75, and I'm going to draw a line next to it. Nothing else has changed, yes? I hold shift again so I can draw a straight line, and I draw down. You can see now I haven't adjusted my exposure setting, but it's a lighter version of, because density has capped that adjustment at 75% of what I've got on the top. Let's carry on. I'm going to do 50, which now means that I'm going to do exposure, but only 50% of that adjustment will be applied when I do a brush stroke over there. You can see them getting lighter, yes? Again, let's do this at 25 and do the same thing. Right, you get the idea. The density slider, therefore, it caps the amount of adjustment that is applied to wherever you brush. Okay, that can be handy, and I'm going to show you after we've dealt with each slider how it applies in real life situations. Next one, let's look at this flow slider. The flow slider sits just above density, and it's a very useful one to blend in adjustments. Now, the density slider capped our adjustments at a specific value. I decided where I want to stop the adjustment, and then whatever I brush, whatever I dial at the top will be stopped at that number. So for now, I'm going to keep the density slider at 100. I'm going to dial in -4 exposure again, just because it works on my frame I have over here. And I'm going to keep my flow at 100%. Let's see what happens. I'm going to keep my feather on 0 as well. Hold shift until I can draw a straight line. That's exactly the same as my first one. Nothing's changed. The flow hasn't affected this at all. Let's now drop our flow to 75, and I'm going to do the exact same line. Nothing else has changed. Hold shift to draw a straight line, and I draw straight down. See what happens? It becomes a little bit lighter. Yes? Watch now if I hold shift and I keep on going over the same line. It eventually gets to 100%. Hold that thought. Let's dial in 50 on our slider, flow slider now. I'm going to draw one line first. Yes? You can see it kind of looks staggered, but it's fading the adjustment in. I can now hold shift again, just because it helps me draw the straight line, and go up and down over the same one, and it will eventually reach the same amount of density as my very first adjustment. One more example before we pull these together. If I go on 25 flow, a single brush stroke will be light. I can keep on going over that same area again and again and again, and it will get to the same as the first one. What is this important? How do they work together? Right, density and flow. If I have capped my density, let's reset all of these. Well, actually, let's do another one next to it. If I drop my density over here to, let's call it 60, yes? It means that whatever adjustment I'm going to do, I cannot go more than 60% of it because I've blocked it, I've capped it with the density slider. With my flow on 25, if I do the first brush stroke, yes, there's 25. If I now keep on going over it again and again and again, watch, I keep on going, but it has blocked my adjustment at 60 because density has capped that off. Does that make sense? Again, the density slider tells you where the adjustment is going to stop, and the flow allows you to, depending on how soft your flow is, to blend that adjustment in and in and in. Almost think of it as a roundabout way to create layers. I can do one brush stroke on the edge of the animal's head, for example, and then do more painting to the middle to do more of that adjustment over there. Right, we're going to do a practical example after, but just a quick look at the feather slider. All right, the feather slider is a simple one. It's a kind of universal thing within the Adobe world where you can adjust the softness or the hardness of the edge of your brush. Right now, my feather on here is set to 0. Notice I've pushed flow and density back up for this exercise. If I draw a single line with my feather at 100, again, I'm going to drop my exposure to there and draw a straight line. We just do this properly. Reset, drop exposure, and I'm going to draw a straight line. That's a very hard edge, yes, because there is no feather. If I take my feather, let's call it up to 25, for example, nothing else has changed, yes? I'm going to draw another line here. Notice how the edges of my brush is now softer. The center of my brush, where the plus sign is in my brush, will be the same, but then it fades out, it softens the brushes. Let's go to 50, ballpark, same thing, draw a line. You can see it gets bigger because I'm opening up the feather. The center should still be dark and it'll fade out from there. If I go all the way, 100% feather, it gets that. So you can see where the uses here might be. If you have a very strong definitive line that is very clear cut, you can use a sharp brush, but it is of value to always have a very soft feather, somewhere in the 20s, which just allows you that little bit of leeway when you're painting around edges. Right, so that's the feather slider. I'm going to quickly look at 2 real-life examples processing wildlife of how those 3 sliders can be used. All right, so this image now has an elephant, which for argument's sake and for the exercise now, we're going to paint him in order to do a special adjustment isolated just to my elephant. Right, I would always use my feather. My feather is generally set at about the 25 range. I quite like that the brush just drops off nice and quickly. Now, auto mask. This is another little thing just to chat about. Auto mask allows the brush, so watch this. I'm going to hit A, which adjusts the auto mask, and O gives me, if I paint here now, I'm not painting red, it just shows me where I have painted, yes? That's O. You can either tick the bottom over there on and off for the overlay, or you can hit O to show or remove that. So, if I have auto mask on, watch what happens when I paint my elephant, right? It kind of finds the edges for me because there's where two tones meet, the contrast meets. As long as I keep the plus sign on the area I want to adjust, the brush will find the outsides for us. Notice, flow is at 100, density is at 100. I'm not mad about the auto mask feature personally. Let me show you why. If I were now to zoom in to, let's go into about a 3-2-1 on this. Okay, and there. We can see the red area, remember, shows me where I have done, where my adjustments will take place. Watch what happens here at the edge. If you look very closely, it finds the edge, but it is a little bit messy because the tones, we just see the big picture. There's tonal values at a closer level. Watch what happens on my elephant's nose here. It didn't pick up some of this, it's scattered. I would have to go afterwards again, take my auto mask off and repaint that area. I find that a waste of time. I'm not mad about this. Also, if you zoom in, let's go in a little bit closer, look at the areas at the bottom of the ears here. It didn't 100% find my edges, right? So that's with the auto mask feature. Let's go back out of here. Let us reset our brush. And now, what I would do to paint this elephant using the flow and density brush, I'm going to take auto mask off. I don't want Lightroom to find the edges for me. Watch here. So now, let us go in, zoom a bit closer so we can paint our elephant. I'm going to zoom in to call it a 2-1. And move my edit to the middle and we can start painting from there. So, I'm going to put my flow on around about 50. Yes? Which means again, I can brush once for a soft adjustment and keep on brushing to reach the capped area which is set by my density slider. So for this exercise, let's block density at 75. Okay. I'm going to use overlay. I don't always use overlay, but we'll leave that for another time. It's just easy to show you guys what's happening. So, if I'm going to start painting, and I'm going to take my feather a little bit wider there, I'm going to now start painting. Single brush stroke, right? You can see that it's a soft red color that I'm going to do as a single brush. Yes? So the soft red means I can now go over, watch, if I go over this area again and again and again, I'm flowing, using the flow slider to blend the adjustment up. So right now, whatever adjustments I choose to make under my brush will be very strong in the middle and fade off to the sides. You're starting to see where this is going. Okay, so I can paint in here hard. If I want to, for example, do the entire elephant, right, with there, I can focus, and I don't want to do the dark areas too much. I can just brush that once, but the rest of it I can do more, which means I can do a single adjustment, which is then blended more in one area and less in another. Think of how light falls on the subject, yes? Depending on the angles and the shadows, the light will be stronger in some areas, the shadows might not have as much of it. This can help you kind of work those subtle nuances in the image to bring that out. If I just choose auto mask and paint this whole elephant, the edges I find might be a little bit messy. I'm thinking finesse, guys. I'm thinking that small little detail that you really care about your images. Alright, so you can paint and decide where more of the adjustments will take place. Now, from an edging point of view, if I zoom in, I'll zoom out here, just show you the red. So I'm not over my edges just yet. Let's go in. I'm going to go zoom in even more for this next just to show you. Right, so I haven't got my auto mask on, but I've got my flow density set as we have, and the feather. I am more than happy when I'm doing this. Okay, now if you look, it might be a very subtle way that I am going over the edges. Yes, you can see on the sky behind the Ellie, I have gone over slightly. If I want to erase, I can hold Alt and then soften that up with the feathered eraser. Yes, but because my flow and density is set, I can take my flow all the way down to 20, go along the edges of my animal, spill over slightly. Remember, we zoomed at 400% here. That little fall over is not going to make a difference. You can then just clean it up. I would rather have, because it's going to be much easier for someone to look at your image and say, oh, your edges look a bit either too strong, or I can see you've painted there, rather than doing this and doing a subtle adjustment by building up from the edge of your subject, building it up to the center, and working the adjustments based on what Lightroom gives you to play with. Right, density slider, flow slider, and feathering. There's different ways to use them, but you need to understand what the tools do before you can fully harness their power, if you will. Guys, there are no secrets. People say, oh, this is a secret used by everybody, and all the wildlife photographers who are in the know do this. It's nothing like that. It's all out there. You can go and Google this. You can watch our YouTube videos, whatever it might be. Here's the tools. Understand, learn and understand what they do, and then apply them to your images. Now, I've done a basic little graph for density, flow, and feather on the blog. So if you're watching this on YouTube, head on over to the Wild Eye blog, and you'll see those images with a little description of each. This is fantastically, fantastically powerful. Understand what density does. Shall we recap? Density, yes, it caps the amount of adjustment to 100%, 50, or then down. So you cannot take, even if you dial in +4 exposure, it caps it to a certain percentage thereof. Flow allows you to, on a single brush stroke, apply less of that adjustment, but you can then, by going over the same area again and again, build it up to your capped amount of what you set by density. And feather just adjusts the softness of the brush. Right, I'm sure we're going to do another one of this and go even more, because there's more tips and tricks on the adjustment brush I can show you guys. But let's look at this. Go and try it out. Play with this. Unlock the secrets, if you will. And if you have any questions, either on YouTube, hit me up on Twitter, go to the Facebook page, and let's dig into this so we can get your images looking better. My name is Gerry. This is Wild Eye. I will see you guys next time.